Hello and welcome. We're joined today by Hall of Famer Eric Dickerson and former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Let's start with the Carolina Panthers, who are trying to rebound from last week's ugly loss to Chicago, where they put up just 3 points. Today, Cam Newton was asked about the struggling offense, and well, this is what happened.
And big plays, big chunk plays kind of get to that energy I think that you're talking about. Does this offense, and I know you had several at Detroit and New England, do you think you guys have the wherewithal to do that consistently week in and week out?
Next question. Thanks.
Probably get.
Colin, I got to be honest with you. I'm left speechless. I mean, what the hell is that? What's going on with Cam Newton?
I almost wonder if, after butchering that press conference question by a woman, and he got criticized, in Cam's world, I'll be a jerk to a guy, and people will say, well, you know, we're judging Cam too harshly. He can just be short with the press. That is so bizarre. That's a completely innocuous question. That wasn't even pointed at, like, Cam. It was the offense, big plays. It was almost like McCaffrey. Not as good as, like, I
think you may be right. I think you're onto something. That's the only explanation. Didn't he skip 2 press conferences last week or something this, again, to go to your word, quarterback-ial, this guy ain't it. And I've defended and I've tried to understand Cam, but I just think the heat's too much, man. He doesn't belong in the kitchen.
Well, look, I do think it's hard to get up in front of the press every day. Essentially, he's up in front every day, except for maybe 1 or 2, and have to answer those hard questions. And then a lot of times they're repetitive. You've answered them over and over again. And sometimes there's someone in the crowd that you have an issue with, or you've never quite felt that their coverage was fair and accurate. So some of those things can happen. But all that being said, at the end of the day, that's your job. That's what you got to do.
Sure.
And
millions of dollars they're paying.
When you're in a leadership role, you've got to be able to deal with that stuff. And it's also your ability to deal with any adversity. Ideally, you'd want your quarterback to be able to move past that and not make this an issue.
Well, I think you're right and you're wrong. First of all, his job is to play football. That's his job. You know, now, when we played, you didn't really have to talk to the media. And a lot of players don't like talking to the media because of stuff like this. First of all, I didn't think the question was a great question, but you can't walk off. I mean, I understand, you just can't walk off.
What was the matter with the question?
I just didn't like the question because, you know, as a player, like he says, you hear some of the questions, like I've heard that and just in a different way. It's like a lawyer asking the question, you know, did you kiss the girl? No. Did the girl kiss you?
Eric.
Hey, I'm Eric. Can I finish? Can I finish?
You made $150,000.
Can I finish?
This dude's gonna make $15, $20 million a year, and he can't deal with one question.
But you got to understand. Look where we are now. We're in the world of social media, where the minute something comes out of your mouth, it's right across the ticker taker right away. I mean, as a player, I know how players feel, especially when you're losing. You're a coach, you know, when you're losing. Everything is bad. I'll say this again. If they'd asked that question and they're winning, they're having a great season, that's no big deal.
Sounds like a front runner to me.
It's a great question.
This is why I've said, in any business, uneven personality equals uneven performance. This is why Russell Wilson, it's almost shocking. If you take Russell Wilson's completion percentage, annual touchdowns, and QBR, it's the same every year. I mean, exactly. Because his personality, his temperament is the same. Cam's a roller coaster. Touchdowns a year, interceptions, completions, QBR. His personality, I use the term quarterback-ial. This has always been my knock on him. When you go to the combine, teams sit you down. They don't care about your bench press. They ask you questions. Can they poke you in the ribs? Are you short-tempered? Can you handle it? This is why my problem.
Wide receiver is what that is.
Yeah.
That's what that is. And so, again, slim him down and move him out to a wide receiver because, dude,
come on, man.
I have defended Cam. I have rooted for Cam. I don't get this, man.
We're going to slim you down and put you in running, put you in wide out. We're going to put you in a wide out position. Put your hands on your hip like this.
Look, I can handle it. They're paying the dude millions of dollars.
Would you, as a coach, would you have to have a meeting because of that?
I don't think this is the first situation where they've had a meeting about something like that. We saw what happened a few weeks ago. This has happened before. There's been issues. What you'd like to see as a coach is you'd like to see some growth. And this is one of those traps. It's so obvious. People are going to try to get you to say something controversial. Don't buy into it. Just treat it like any other game plan.
We've seen this before.
Don't do it.
We've seen this before. I wish we had called up the Ryan Leaf video.
Right.
He's in the locker room, and all the press is asking him questions, and he just explodes and goes off, and knock it off, or whatever. We've seen some guys that's a lot of heat, a lot of pressure. When you're the #1 overall pick, or like Leaf was, the 2nd or 3rd pick, they give you all that money, and you're supposed to be the guy. A lot of guys just ain't built for that kind of heat in the kitchen.
And I don't think Cam is.
But it's a lot of guys like that. It really is.
Deflategate. Tom Brady, for 2 years, answered questions about Deflategate. Never walked out. He's a grown-up. He's built, his DNA is to be a quarterback.
And the only way that stuff becomes a story is if something like this happens. And you tell the guys, don't take the cheese. You know they're going to try to bait you to say something controversial, so it's so much easier just to deal with it in the moment than to have to deal with a week of everybody talking about it and everybody dealing with it.
$20 million, and the guy that asked him the question, I guarantee he's making $50,000. Again, it's like my mother always say about women. She got as much to lose as you got.
But
it ain't Cam's fault he's making $20 million.
No, I'm saying it is.
But there is a certain responsibility.
Yeah.
But there does come times where whether you're making $50 million, $50,000, whatever it is, there's a way that you should talk to people, and there's a way that you should treat people.
But that wasn't outrageous.
No, I don't think that was. But there's definitely examples where that crosses the line.
I think he'll look back later at some of the antics he's like, man, that wasn't cool.
Yeah, when you're and out of the league.
Yeah.
You do. Sometimes it takes that long.
Welcome back. Joined now by Fox NBA analyst Chris Broussard, co-host mine on The Herd, Christine Leahy. Let's move to LeBron, who last night made his first start at point guard since 2005. Boy, was he good. Led the Cavs to a win over Chicago in that daunting backcourt. 13 assists, 34 points. Afterward, LeBron was typically humble about the performance.
Ever since I was a kid, I've always learned every position on the floor. When I started playing ball, for some odd reason, I could learn every single position on the floor all at one time. The point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center, and know all the plays, what they're doing, and what's the reads. And to this day, obviously, still, if coach slides me to the 1, I know every set. If he slides me to the 5, I know the 5. I know the 4, I know the 3, I know the 2. I know every single play in every single position. So it makes the job a lot easier for me because I know where I should be and what my teammates should be.
All right, Whitlock, were you impressed?
No, it was the Chicago Bulls, the worst team in basketball, and I already knew LeBron could play the point. He plays that. Why do you think Kyrie's in Boston? Because LeBron played the point even when he wasn't a point guard. So I wasn't all that impressed.
I know. I'm watching that soundbite, and I'm watching Christine, and I'm thinking it just drives her crazy. This is what drives people crazy about LeBron. It doesn't bother me. He's the best person in the world. Steve Jobs.
He's the best person?
No, I mean, he's the best person at what he does in the world.
Okay.
And Steve Jobs, when he was there, was the best, tech guy. Sometimes LeBron, goes on, and I'm watching you, and I'm thinking, that kind of drives you crazy, right?
Yeah, you know what I'll say.
Go ahead and say it. What was wrong with what he said?
It's very accurate.
Yeah,
I'm watching like, hey, this is
a fact.
He did a great job during the game, but he was playing the Bulls, as you said. And then he has to come on and tell us how great he is. If you're the greatest in the world at something that you do, let your product speak for itself. You don't have to come out and tell us how amazing you are. And the problem I had the most with it was, what about his other teammates, where they spend their whole careers at that position, and he's basically just saying to them, oh, I can do all of your jobs, 1 through 5, easily.
Well, they know that, first of all. Throughout his career, he has been a point guard. Every team he's been on, he's been the closest thing to a point guard that the team has had. And now, who's the better point guard, LeBron James or Isaiah Thomas?
LeBron James. Right.
LeBron James or Derrick Rose?
LeBron James.
I actually think these next few games where Derrick Rose is sitting out, if I'm the Cavaliers, I'm looking at this as an experiment because I'm not so sure that they shouldn't leave LeBron James at point guard. And then you can start Crowder, Thompson, Kevin Love on the front line, and J.R. Smith at the 2. When he's at point guard, he is consciously trying to get other guys off. So I'm going to get Kevin Love off. I'm going to get J.R. off. He's going to get 25 to 30 just because he's so good. So I think this could be a good look for Cleveland.
That's fine.
And they should look at this
That's
as an
fine, but he doesn't need to come out and say, hey, by the way, I can do all your jobs.
He didn't say how great he was. He stated a fact. I know all the positions. It's not critical of his teammates.
Do you think it's to her point, though, do you think that's do you think players listen to that and think, oh, yeah, yeah.
How does Kevin Love feel right now?
Did he come out and say, well, of course I can play the point. I'm the best player in the world. I can play center, too.
Basically,
No,
that's what he was
he
saying.
didn't.
Yeah,
he said, I know all the positions, which he does.
But
what is wrong with that?
What's the point? You're the greatest in the world. Do we all need to be reminded?
No, no, no.
Like, hey, in case my GQ article didn't tell you that they think I'm the greatest, let me also tell you that I'm the greatest.
Let me tell you where you're right, Christine, where you're really right. I do think this is part of his thing he wants to put in his Michael Jordan debate. Could Michael Jordan play all five
that's
positions?
really interesting.
Could Michael Jordan be a point guard? And if he did, and selfishly, if I were him, I would want to play point guard this season because if he became the best point guard in the NBA, that would be another mark in his favor against Michael Jordan.
And we've talked about this, Christine, in our show. The all-time greats go through 3 stages. There's the proving I'm great, Tiger Woods winning tournaments. There's the
rings, winning.
Gold records, rings. Then there's the mogul stage. And the mogul stage is creating narratives, all-time narratives.
Yeah, I'll put it different. He's worried about his legacy.
Legacy.
And
that's
playing
a legacy.
point and being a dominant point guard and putting this out there. Who else could play all 5 positions at a great level other than me?
By the way, I talked about it on my show for 10 minutes today. I started talking about it.
Honestly, I hope you're right. I don't think you're right because I've talked to LeBron over the years about why don't you just play point guard. He has never wanted to be called a point guard. He's never wanted to commit to playing the point guard for some reason.
This wasn't even about him being the point guard. It was about him saying, I can play all the positions. And you don't have to pump yourself up if you're the greatest unless you're trying to work for something or prove something. He has nothing left to prove. He's the greatest player right now. Yes, that's the answer. That's why he's doing it.
Okay, one more thing. You brought up a point that's very interesting. They can't beat Golden State as currently constructed. Very interesting. If they put LeBron at point, this is a separate show, for about a month, and it clicks, suddenly that is a matchup issue for the Warriors.
Because Isaiah's a 2. You can easily put him at the 2 guard.
Absolutely put him at a 2.
Listen, I think they should pursue this, no question, because there are no other solutions. I don't think they're going to acquire anybody that's going to make a difference. They're going to have to play a different style and a different way to beat Golden State and come up with some kind of matchup advantage.
I think that's
LeBron at the point might be it.
And he can show Kyrie he's better at his own job.
LeBron versus Steph Curry. To a couple of other point guards, Lonzo Ball and John Wall, who face off tonight at Staples Center. Earlier this week, LeVar Ball guaranteed a Lakers victory, and Wizards center Marcin Gortat responded by tweeting that Wall was going to, quote, torture Lonzo. This morning, John Wall was asked how he'd approach Lonzo tonight and said, quote, no mercy. I'm playing against Ball. Gortat said what he said about me. I didn't say anything. His dad has been talking. That makes me want to go out there and lead my team and play the best I can play. All right, Cowherd, who comes out looking better tonight, Wall or Ball?
Well, Wall is exactly what Ball isn't, athletic. So John could make him look really bad on the defensive end. But what's interesting is this is in John's head. John's like, oh, I'm going to drop 50. Okay, if Lonzo comes out tonight and plays within himself in a structured offense, and Wall drops 50, and the Lakers pass, and Lonzo goes 12, 12, and 9, that is a big win for Lonzo.
Yeah, I do think the dad has put the pressure on John Wall tonight. John Wall needs to perform. But one thing we do know, I think we will all agree on, the Wizards will win tonight.
Yes.
They have the better team.
Yes.
So that's a plus in Wall's category. Now it comes down to an individual performance, and you would have to think John Wall is going to outplay a 19-year-old kid.
But what if
no matter how talented.
What if he goes into, shifts gears to me against Ball? That's not a win for John. He looks immature. He looks like he's playing for himself, not the team.
You're absolutely right. If he goes out there and tries to score 50,
and he could,
that's not what's best for the Wizards.
Exactly.
So I think Wall will come out better because they'll win. He'll have at least his 24 and 10, which are his averages. But see, Wall, I believe, is mature enough and competitive enough where he goes at everybody hard. He shows no mercy to anybody he plays against. I don't think he'll get outside of his game. If he does, you're right, it could be bad for the Wizards, but I don't think he will. I think he'll have his typical great game. But I think Lonzo will play well, too. And it could work against the Wizards if Wall gets outside of himself.
Well, John Wall can say whatever he wants to say. I have no problem with that. But he has the most to lose in the game because everyone expects him to play a lot better than Lonzo. So if he doesn't, then that makes him look bad. Like, why are you calling out this 19-year-old? You can't even live up to the hype.
Right.
Now you're making it look bad. You're taking away from your team. So he has the potential to lose.
Also,
more.
John's not a great shooter. John does have halves in which he struggles. And so if Wall comes out and takes 26 shots and hits 8, tomorrow on this show, we're like, he didn't account for himself. Like, to Christine's point, we think John's going to light him up.
But Lonzo also has a lot to gain from this situation. If he can play well and stand up to a guy who's calling him out, that says a lot, and it sends a message, I think, to the rest of the league who's still going to try to come at him every game, like, hey, I can handle it.
I'm going to go back to veer off a little bit here. If I'm Luke Walton, if I'm Magic Johnson, if I'm Rob Pelinka, this isn't what I want my team to be about.
No.
Lonzo Ball, how's he performing against the other point guard night after night after night? If I'm Brandon Ingram, if I'm any of the other, Jordan Clarkson, any of the guys on the team, it's like the 19-year-old kid that every night, that's all we're talking about is Lonzo Ball against everybody. How do you build a team? How do you set the foundation? How do you set the atmosphere to make it about winning and the team as a collective when this LeVar Ball cloud and he's driving the narrative, he's setting the agenda for the team? It's a recipe that I just don't think works that well.
So what do? You, Magic or Pelinka should meet privately with LeVar and be like, look, explain it to him. This isn't helping. I mean, the thing about Lonzo has grown up with this his entire life.
Not the rest of the Lakers, though.
I agree. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong, and that's maybe you meet with them privately, but Lonzo, I think, will be fine.
The only guy that can meet with LeVar and make a difference is the kid. I don't think Magic or Rob Pelinka. I think Lonzo has to say, hey, Dad, I get it. I know you love me. I know you got my back. I'm a grown man now. Or at least I'm in a grown man's league.
Yeah.
And I can't be the little kid anymore and having the rest of the league talk about me and my daddy all the time. That's what we did when we were kids. My daddy can beat your daddy.
My dad was not Thomas.
Here's the thing, though,
not a fighter.
And obviously, he's got a target on his back.
Yeah.
But let's not, how do you measure, are the guys going against him harder now because of his dad or not? Dennis Smith Jr., do we even know who his dad is? We haven't heard a peep from his dad, and Draymond Green still was like, you ain't dunking on me, you never will, rookie, don't even try. So a rookie, they're going at you anyway.
No,
I don't know if you can measure.
More people coming at him because of the
Would
whole
they say it? But how do you measure it? So John Wall doesn't play hard against the rest of the league?
We're
I mean, he's
talking
going
about it.
out
It's a
trying.
subject.
We're talking. That's not on the court.
Again,
John Wall goes at everybody hard.
Yeah.
Can we measure that he's going harder at Lonzo
Martin
than he's going to go at Steph Curry?
Martin Gortat's not talking about torture.
That's Marcin Gortat. I'm talking about John Wall.
Every player in the league is talking about
They're
this.
talking about, when you're a defensive player, Patrick Beverly, it makes a difference because that's your game. Anger, getting him 94 feet. For an offensive player, it might not help because now you're getting out of your game. You may be shooting too much.
That's what I think Wall could do today. Welcome back. Joel Klatt's here. And we're joined by the founder of the league, Jason McIntyre. Keep these guys apart. Let's move to the guy who inspired that Twitter beef, Jim Harbaugh, whose Michigan team blown out last week by Penn State, dropping the coach to a dismal 3-5 against the school's biggest rivals, Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan State. Not only that, Harbaugh has exactly the same record through his first 33 games as the much-maligned Brady Hoke.
It's the worst comparison in all sports.
Whitlock, do you really think Harbaugh's overrated?
I don't understand why I wasn't reading this intro so I could ask both of you, put you two on the defensive. It's time to admit the man has been overhyped.
No, he's not.
He's a tremendous coach. But at some point, You have to win your conference. You have to win these games that matter the most before you start comparing him to Urban Meyer and these other guys.
Have I ever said he's anything but a really great coach? A tremendous coach? Have I ever said he's the best coach in college football?
I just don't hear the passion. I just hear him being put in the same lane as Urban Meyer and Nick Saban, and he doesn't.
Well, they're in their
deserve
own lane. Yeah. They're in their own lane. Okay, they're in like that special electric car HOV. Like no one gets into that lane, right?
So we agree now. That's good.
Well, of course, but he's certainly in the next lane.
Yeah, you
the
make
next lane over. You make him out to be Brady Hoke.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't make him out to be Brady
Yes, you
Hoke.
do. You constantly compare him to Brady Hoke.
No.
It's not even a comparison.
I just put those numbers up just to add
compare
some
him to Brady Hoke.
Context, Joel. It's called context. Put the man in proper context. What it is, he
That's
has something
awful context.
to prove.
Jason.
He has something to prove.
That is awful context, and let me tell you why. Because through the first 35 games of any great coach, whether it's Urban Meyer at Ohio State or Nick Saban at Alabama or Dabo Swinney at Clemson or Jimbo Fisher at Florida State, what you're going to see is that Jim Harbaugh's record is as good or better than any of those guys in their first 35 games at those stops. The fact of the matter is that people don't like Jim Harbaugh. That's fine. That's fine. But just admit it for what it is. There is a deep, hold on. Yeah. There is a deep disdain for Jim Harbaugh. Okay, for
his salary,
for Jim Harbaugh, his salary, the way that he behaves in the
antics.
offseason, his antics. Right, exactly. And the AP has incorrectly punished the team. They should be in the top 25. If you're going to tell me Memphis is better than Michigan, that's a sword that you can jump on because I'm certainly not going to jump on that one.
I would agree with that. That he should be in. That they should be in the top 25.
Joel, let me ask you: how is Whitlock going to handle it when Michigan loses to Wisconsin? They haven't won there since 2001, and Ohio State, and then Michigan has 4 losses. Are we going to go next level, Whitlock? Are you going to then say he's not even a good coach because they're going to lose 4 games this year?
Maybe.
They lost 11 guys to the draft. They got 3 freshmen starting in the secondary.
They're
going to get lit up.
Why would I go to he's not a good coach? Because that's never been my contention.
Well, they're going to lose 4 games. They could lose a bowl, 5.
That's never been my contention.
Okay,
so you're putting words in my mouth.
Overrated.
But when he came there, I was on the set with my different color hair, and you guys asked me, would he make the top 10? And I said to you, who's leaving the top 10? I don't see TCU getting bad. Now, Oregon has left it. But I also said, the Big Ten is loaded.
Yeah, they're good.
Is Lovie Smith, who got to a Super Bowl, the 8th best
I got
coach?
this violin player. It's so tough for Jim. You're right. We got to grade him on a curve because Urban Meyer and James Franklin showed up. If I could just get people celebrating, I wouldn't be so upset if people celebrated James Franklin, who's actually won the Big Ten, the way we celebrate Harbaugh. I would then back off a little bit.
But if you want to put up graphics about coaching record, don't start with James Franklin and Jim Harbaugh because it's not close.
Where did I say anything
well,
about
I'm just saying, you're the one that's comparing, you know, the
You
graphics.
make it sound like I said something about coaching record. I said something about winning the conference.
Stick with one argument. That's all I'm saying because you're comparing him to Brady Hoke with winning and losing, and then you're saying James Franklin needs to be celebrated. But if you compared Franklin's record to Brady Hoke or Jim Harbaugh, it would fall woefully short. James Franklin has been brilliant, and I'll be the first to say it. His last 17 games, they've been 16-1. They're only lost in the Rose Bowl. This guy has done great things. He's hired a great staff, namely offensive coordinator Joe Moorhead. He gets them motivated to play in big games. You would never hear me say that, oh, James Franklin's not this or that, like everyone tries to do with Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is a phenomenal football coach who's got a less than experienced team. They're losing some games. They got blown out due to a bad offensive line this last week, and good on Penn State for doing it. But this whole narrative that Jim Harbaugh is overrated is just the most wild, false narrative that we have in college football right now.
You know that Harbaugh is better than Brady Hoke.
I've never argued anything else.
Okay.
I've never argued
I know, but that stuff
else.
you put on Twitter.
No.
That's why I got cranky.
It's called context. He's got at the same school. He's got the same record through 33 games as the guy that everybody thinks is a clown.
Your context needs context.
Let's bet 20 grand
20
about
grand.
the next 3 years.
20,000.
Brady's last 3 years.
I was just
going to
bet you dinner at a steakhouse.
I don't think Brady lasted 3 years.
Would you want to do
20 grand.
It's your sword. It's your comparison. Let's go.
You know what I'd like to do, Joe? Compare their first 33 games to each other because that's the information we
then
have.
put up
I don't have to
then
go
put
out
up
there to
Saban's first
hypothetical.
33 at Alabama. It's virtually the same.
Different
2 and
schools.
6
Why-
first year.
how is it different?
And Saban, you could criticize Saban. Y'all have put Jim Harbaugh on this pedestal where no one can say anything. Everything he did, oh, he goes out the room. He's sleeping at a kid's house. Oh, he climbed a tree. All of it's great. He's going to reinvent college football. And there were people like me and Nick Saban and Urban Meyer and James Franklin was like, man, this dude's a clown. Just, just
now you're
coach
putting
your
yourself
football
on the pedestal
team.
of
He's a
Nick
hell of a
Saban?
coach.
Yeah, you're a
Just
hell of a
coach
coach.
your football
coach.
team and concentrate on, because he's a hell of a coach. If he would just focus on that rather than the clown stuff. I don't need the clown stuff. To Columbus, where we've got one of the biggest matchups of the year on Fox this weekend, as number 2 Penn State takes on number 6 Ohio State. Joel Klatt will be calling that game, and I'm a little bit concerned. Big stage. I know Gus can handle it. The last time these teams met, Penn State pulled off a shocking fourth-quarter comeback to win it, which Urban Meyer says will help motivate his team this week.
You know, you have to figure you're dealing with youngsters, and sure, is revenge a motivator? Hell yeah, it is. You know, I'm not saying this will be it, but there's times where we've used it and we look silly using it. There's other times that worked. I don't know yet. You know, that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday isn't about that. That's about execution of a game plan and focus.
All right, Cowherd, will last year's result have any impact this weekend?
Yeah. I think people carry grudges. Michael Jordan Hall of Fame speech for 30 years. To think a 19-year-old wouldn't carry a grudge for a year, it's something.
That'll last about 2 snaps.
Well,
So you get hit right in the mouth. Right? Yeah, I mean,
that'll last 2 snaps.
Here's what's interesting. What about the opposite side revenge factor? Penn State is the one that was left out of the playoff for an Ohio State team that didn't win the division and didn't win the conference. I think that the revenge factor might be even greater on the Nittany Lions side.
They get no respect. You're right. I mean, you guys love to talk about
lean on
Harbaugh and
last
Urban Meyer.
You got to go back to Harbaugh. Joel, here's where I'm concerned for Ohio State. You know how many teams they've beaten with a winning record this year? 1. Army. That's it. I mean, J.T. Barrett could not move the ball against Oklahoma.
They don't sleep on the Black Knights.
54% completions, 1 interception. This is the same Ohio State defense, right? Sorry, the same Oklahoma defense that gave up like 48 to Baylor, 38 to Iowa State. Again, Ohio State, I don't know how you're picking them, Cowherd. I really don't get it. This Penn State team just dominated a great defense in Michigan.
Urban Meyer hasn't lost off a bye since he lost to Ben Roethlisberger at Bowling Green.
That's a good stat.
He is one of those coaches, Andy Reid, Urban Meyer, Saban. If you give extra time, this is like a bowl game. I also think Penn State came off a huge emotional win. And I think Penn State's been beaten up on tomato cans for a month and a half, and they're just circling this puppy.
Yeah, I can't.
Other than the Harbaugh thing, I think Joel Klatt's the smartest guy on college football.
Yeah.
And Joel Klatt started out the year talking about Ohio State, and I was questioning him, and then they lost to Oklahoma. The Ohio State team that Joel was talking about earlier in the year, I think is here now. And I know they haven't played, they haven't beaten anybody, but when I watch their defensive line,
oh, good Lord.
It's unbelievable.
This small quarterback, I just don't think he's going to be able to survive it. I think there's going to be too many guys in his face.
That's exactly what I think.
I'll tell you one thing. This is going to be the best game of the college football year until we get to the playoffs.
I hope you can handle it.
By the way,
I know Gus has got it.
the Vegas line has come down from 11.5 to 6.5. Just saying.